All right, so picture this. A city, but not just any city. We're talking massive, wealthy, powerful. This is Nineveh, striking fear into, well, pretty much everyone back then.
Oh, absolutely. It dwarfed anything else around at the time. Really something.
And today, we're diving into its downfall, specifically through the book of Nahum. You've brought us these excerpts, and knowing you, it's not just about some ancient city biting the dust.
No, no, not at all. You're right. See, Nahum's prophecy, especially how this guy Haymo of Halberstadt interpreted it, it's got a lot to say about power, temptation, all that, even now.
Haymo of Halberstadt, huh? Sounds like our kind of guy. Okay, but before we get into that, let's back up. Who was Nahum? Why is he writing about this city like it's the end of the world?
Right, so Nahum was a prophet, pretty important one too. And the funny thing is, his name, it means comforter.
Comforter. That's not exactly the vibe I'm getting so far.
Yeah, well, about that. You see, Nahum's message, it's full of doom and gloom, vivid descriptions of destruction. But for the Israelites back then, hearing about Nineveh getting its comeuppance, that would have been not comforting.
Ah, because they were on the receiving end of all that destruction for so long.
Exactly. We're talking about the Assyrians here, the folks in charge of Nineveh. They were infamous. Absolutely brutal.
Wait, this is the impaling people kind of brutal? I feel like I've read about this.
That's them. Nahum even describes it. And Haymo, he picks up on that, sees it as like foreshadowing what goes around comes around, you know.
Heavy stuff. So when Nahum's predicting all this doom and gloom, he's also offering a glimmer of hope to the people who suffered under these Assyrians.
Spot on. It's like saying, look, even empires like this, they don't get a free pass. There's a higher power at work. But you gotta understand, the Assyrians weren't just some small-time bullies. This was the dominant force in the ancient Near East. Military power, ruthlessness, the whole package.
And the Israelites, they bore the brunt of it.
Right. So yeah, they wouldn't be too broken up about Nineveh getting its due. But what's interesting is what Haymo, centuries later, picks up on. He's fascinated by the theology of it all.
Theology, like how God plays into this whole mess.
Exactly, how God's revealed through all this in both Nineveh's rise and its fall.
Okay, so back to Haymo. Who was this guy, besides, theology buff, interested in ancient cities?
So Haymo of Halberstadt, medieval scholar, big-time commentator on the Bible. And he wasn't just reading this stuff, he was dissecting it, really trying to understand the why.
Not just what happened, but what's it mean?
Exactly. And for Haymo, Nineveh, it wasn't just history, it was an allegory. Like, it had all these layers of meaning for the church and for people in general, even now.
So he's reading Nahum, all this prophecy of fire and brimstone, and he's thinking, what's the takeaway here? What does this tell us about ourselves?
Exactly. He's holding up this ancient city, this whole situation like a mirror. It's like he's saying, look closer. What do you see?
So we're talking about layers of meaning here. What's Haymo seeing in Nineveh's destruction that goes beyond, just deserts?
Well, he starts with God, specifically how God's presented by Nahum. There's a lot of wrath there, fury at Nineveh's wickedness.
Right. Not exactly the turn the other cheek kind of God we often hear about.
And this is where Haymo is really sharp. See, he knew the Old Testament God. It's a different emphasis, let's say, than later on. God's jealousy, for example.
Jealousy. I mean, that sounds kind of petty.
It's not about being petty, not in the way we think of it. It's more like fierce protectiveness. God's commitment to his people, it's total. No rivals allowed, not for their devotion.
So Nineveh turning away, embracing idols, violence, all that. It's not just them messing up. It's like a betrayal of this bond.
Exactly, a direct challenge to God's covenant. And Haymo, he points to how Nahum describes Nineveh, a harlot, decked out in finery, drunk on power. It's not subtle.
Symbolic, though. He's getting at something deeper.
Right. Spiritual corruption. They're lost in their own wealth, their conquest. Remember that image, the lion's den overflowing with loot? That's Nineveh. Haymo saw their greed as central to their downfall.
Like, they built their empire on taking what wasn't theirs, on broken promises.
Yeah.
And it caught up with them.
Exactly. And here's where Haymo goes even bigger. Those descriptions of Nineveh falling, the violence, the flood imagery, he sees echoes of something else.
Something else, you mean?
The apocalypse. That flood in Revelation, the final judgment, Haymo's connecting those dots. It's like Nineveh's destruction is a miniature version, a taste of what's to come.
Wow. So even when it's specific, talking about this one city, he's bringing in the end of the world.
He's thinking on a cosmic scale, this one event, it reflects something universal.
So it's more than just bad guys get punished, the end. Haymo's saying this applies to, well, everyone.
Yeah, it's bigger than just Nineveh. It's about evil in general, how it always eventually gets its due.
Any evil. Or is he talking empires specifically, like, watch out, bad rulers?
No, it's broader. Think about it. The Assyrians, they're like the poster children for what happens when you go against God, right? Power hungry, ignoring God's laws, cruel. Haymo's saying AMY group, any person even who thinks that way, they're heading for a Nineveh-style ending.
So what about us regular folks? Not out conquering nations, but still, we mess up. What's Haymo's take on that?
Well, he says, look, Nineveh was tempted, right? Wealth, power, all the good stuff. But those temptations, they're still around. He even points to those merchants Nahum talks about, how they're like a swarm of locusts devouring everything.
It's a vivid image. And greedy merchants, that's not exactly an ancient problem.
Exactly. Haymo's warning us against getting so caught up in stuff and wanting more and more that we lose sight of what matters, our values, our relationship with God.
So all those details about Nineveh being rich, all the palaces and treasures and whatnot, that's not just to make the story exciting. It's supposed to make us think twice about our own priorities.
You got it. It's that mirror again. Haymo's making us ask, okay, what are my Ninevehs? What do I put before God? Am I so busy chasing comfort, security that I've forgotten about compassion, about justice?
These are some pretty heavy questions to be getting from a book about an ancient city. So, what's the answer? How do we avoid our own personal Ninevehs?
Haymo's not big on easy answers. He's more about getting us to think for ourselves. Take stock,
Yeah.
Recognize that we're all capable of being tempted, of being greedy, prideful, and that real strength, it's not about what we own, Ben, but about our connection to something bigger.
Man, we started with Nineveh, this ancient city,
Yeah.
and now it's like looking inward. It's
Yeah.
definitely giving me some things to think about, that's for sure.
Me too. There's always more to uncover, right?
Always. And that's what we're here for. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep looking for those deeper meanings.